You ever wake up with like a weird train of thought that leads you to making a rant that you normally walk around the house, just like, like kind of, I don't know, being like momentarily angry before you start your day or anything else and no one's around to hear it? Well, I have a camera, so someone's going to hear it. And you know what that rant's about? Been a while since I've done this, so I'm trying not to be super negative, but occasionally you got to vent. Too many producers are focused on the wrong thing. You watching this video are probably focused on the wrong thing. I, making this video with the wisdom I now have, know that at one point in time, many points in time, I was focused on the wrong thing. And that thing is the technical stuff. We are all sort of focused more on the tools than the ingredients. We think the next EQ, the next compressor, the next plugin, the next advanced technique of production, whatever that may mean to you, is the thing that will help our music do better, for lack of a better phrase. Like, so much of the difference between a seasoned producer versus a beginner and amateur is knowing that it's the music and the ideas that come first and not the tools and the processes. And this is kind of paramount to being good at almost anything. Like, this is YouTube, so we know how the meta goes between each niche. Like, photography is another one I'm part of. Everyone thinks the new camera with better autofocus, the more megapixels, IBIS, all that stuff is going to make their photos better, not realizing it's them. They just don't put in the hours to actually be better. Putting in the hours at the basics. Like, if it's photography, it's composition, it's lighting, it's the story, it's the thing, it's the idea. It's not the camera. The camera just is a digital light box, you know what I mean? When it's production, when it's music writing, it's the ideas, it's the melodies, it's the counter melodies, the harmonies, it's the arrangement, which is probably the biggest problem most people have, is like actually knowing how to arrange a piece of music. It's not the EQ, it's not how you saturated your bass line, it's not like an LFO, it's not wavetables, it's not like insert other technical thing. Like, it's the basics, it's the fundamentals, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who's trying to get better at let's use basketball as the analogy, is shooting the same shot multiple times and figure out every little way that they move so they can make that shot more accurate, more repeatable. That's just what you need to do to get better. It's the fundamentals that make you better at the thing. Like, it's not the flair comes later. The personality, the tricks, that comes later, but you have to master the fundamentals. And so many producers are trying to skip those fundamentals and just get to the next new hot thing. And believe me, I love the next new hot thing. I love like having a shiny new EQ or something that just like looks cool because like, ooh, colors and like the band moves now. Or this thing like makes this sound and that's cool. Like, but you don't take the time to actually understand it, and you complain that it doesn't exactly do what the other thing does, but you can't tell me what both things do at the same time. And you're not realizing that you spent all this money on all these plugins and all these tools, but your music isn't getting better, or it isn't being received any better, or it isn't doing something that you wanted to do, and you blame the tool and not the carpenter. You are the carpenter. You got to focus on the fundamentals. Okay? Talk to any seasoned producer. If you watch like any of like the, you know, like Mix with the Masters or something, every solution is always basically the same, right? You start with a great sound source or a great performance, and you use simple tools to just refine what's there. You don't start with mediocre and try and stack, and then do all these things, like, because that's not what's gonna help. Like, it's the ideas that will carry you. If we're talking about the dance floor, people dance to ideas, all right? People don't dance to your EQ cuts at 3K.
Message!
People don't dance because your bass line is saturated just so, or your drums are clipped just so, you know what I mean? We get caught up worrying about producing for other producers or the forum or the new online meta, and not for the joy of getting better at the thing and seeing a couple people dance to it if we're fortunate enough. That's what's important. The fundamentals are what's important. The fundamentals of songwriting and mixing, let's go with mixing first, is gain, volume, panning, and EQ since like the dawn of time. And it's crazy that that's all it took in like the 60s and 70s to make the greatest Motown hits that still like slap today. But we're trying to use the next clipper to make something like another dB louder and then wondering why no one cares about it. It's because musically it's terrible. Like, you don't need loads to mix. If all your sources are good, you don't need a whole lot to mix. Like, that's why you'll see videos of the seasoned vets just talking about, oh, I still use this thing from back in the day. I still use Logic Pro 9. And it's like, well, how do you use that? It's like terrible to use. It's like just use. It's not user friendly, but like it's simple. It gets the sound they want. You know what I mean? Like, why people use Pro Tools to this day is because, like, and why it's industry standard, other than just like marketing and that kind of thing, is because it just had at the time the tools to get the job done, and those are all the tools you needed were just basic high quality fundamental EQ, compressor, mixer, a good reverb, good delay, just the stuff you actually need because the ideas are what work. Or we're talking about arrangements, like it's the sequence of sounds. It's how the sounds are layered. Like, if you have two harsh sounds fighting for space, like, why? Get rid of one of them. Or maybe make one play, then the next play, but you don't need both. When it comes to layering, if you think of traditional music, let's go orchestra, my other background, like, you'll have violas and maybe bassoon playing because they have complementary like textures. Or maybe you have flutes and violins, playing something similar. You have the cellos in the low end, and then you have like trombones playing either like a counter melody or something, but like you're taking two separate textures and putting them together to create a stronger sound. That's the whole point of layering. One thing reinforces the other, the sum is greater than the individual parts, that kind of thing. Like arrangements, like, is the pacing good? Are you starting from here, then you building up, or is everything just kind of happening? Like, is it free jazz, or is it, you know what I mean? Like, is there a structure? All that goes into a good, well-written song, no matter the genre, whether it's electronic and just loops, or big band jazz, or pop music, or indie, or whatever. Like, the ideas, the arrangement, the actual music making is what's important. The fundamentals. Sound design is a different thing. Use all the stuff, please. Like, I love a good sound that I haven't heard before, or a good take on a sound that I haven't heard before. But when it comes to mixing, probably don't need much. When it comes to the ideas of how to use that sound, that's probably more important. It's why you have these classic tunes of any genre that sound crusty and gross and like technically mixed down terribly, but like they go down, and like in a club, they make you feel something. They evoke an emotion, and that's because the songwriting and the fundamentals were great. Okay. Like in the drum and bass realm that I live in, like if Break mixed a Calibre tune, would it make it any better? Like if Calibre mixed a Break tune, would it really matter? Like, of course, sonically it'd be different, but like, would it bring anything to the table? Not really. It might even make it worse simply because it doesn't work. One of the best pieces of advice I've gotten is from somebody who I consider like a master mix engineer when it comes to drum and bass, and it's Urban Dawn. I can't remember like the exact words he told me, but it was just like, your songs like work because you want them to sound that way. So however you decided to mix it is how it should sound, and that's why it sounds good. A mix will not save a bad idea, but a good idea can outlast an okay mix down. There's an example in any genre. Modern pop music, some of it has terrible mix downs, but people love to sing along to it. You know what I mean? You can't outmix a bad idea. You can't outrun your diet. You gotta learn the fundamentals. And only once you know the fundamentals will your music get better to you and to the people who are listening to it. And most likely be received better, all right? Like, that's all it takes. Bruce Lee, you know what I mean? It's, I do not fear the man who has practiced 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 1,000 times. You have to know the fundamentals. Otherwise, you are in your own way. You're trying to find a technical solution for a creative problem, and you wonder why you're so frustrated. Message. Sometimes it is, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it is the tool that you need to work. But sometimes it's the tool that needs to get it in his mind that, like, you know what I mean? Anyway. This has been a long rant, but stop asking me like how to layer snares or how to like what needs more saturation when like You have 16th synths all playing the same octave sound, and you're wondering where the harshness is coming from. You know what I mean? It's the ideas, it's the arrangement, it's the musicality, it's not the EQ, it's not the new shiny mix technique. That stuff is later. Learn the basics, and then you'll understand if and when and why you might need the more advanced thing. That's all. I'm done.